Hi, this is Mega Geek and I'm Dan. Welcome back to the workshop. This is going to be a quick update on the CNC machine rebuild. Let's take a look at the various things I've been doing. So once I got the physical connections all geared up, I tack wired everything back into the control board and set about playing with a pen to do some plotter stuff. So various failed attempts at this test pattern. This one went pretty badly. This was the last one that went pretty well. This is the design, I'm going to say the final design, but here is the little graveyard of parts where I variously iterated through something that was just going to hang off the spindle with a pen at the side, a very simple one with just a spring that ran up the pen, various things where I thought outboard springs would work. Basically, the problem, like, it sort of feels simple, but at this point in the CNC build, the bed isn't really leveled. I haven't machined anything, and so you're kind of compensating for an uneven bed and trying to get a pen to exert just the right pressure on a page to draw without really digging in and ripping or being too light is kind of tricky. I tried all these various things, and what I wanted was something that would kind of semi-float on springs like this. But of course the problem with that is that you also want the end to be quite firm in place, because otherwise it drags around the place. So this design ended up with these 6mm brass rods in the 3D printed part. It's kind of difficult to see, but this attempt I've put 2 sets of 3 ball bearings at either end to provide the shaft kind of contact points, and then originally I had this carriage sort of sliding on this back, but that was too much friction. Even now, side to side has a bit of wobble because these springs can kind of let it do that. So it does have a little bit of backlash, and you can kind of see that backlash in the join points on some of the letters. Where as it's changing direction, like, it's mostly pretty good, but it changes direction, particularly on all these blocks. They get squidged up or whatever, because that's just the pen kind of flipping backwards and forwards a bit. But that was mostly a distraction. It was fun to play with. I think, this is probably as far as I'm going to bother taking this pen mount design. That did lead me to creating a Z-probe, so to try and counteract not having a level bed. And for something that will be useful in the future, I wanted the ability to probe the bed, which is a 3D printing thing, or at least in my mind it came from 3D printing. But yeah, so this is just a little simple 3D print. Inside there's an optical sensor, exactly the same as these optical sensors that I'm using for the end stops. And just like a little spring so that this goes up and down, and when that goes up it pushes a block between the optical sensors, and so this was designed so that it would mount directly in a collet in the spindle, so it would be kind of exactly on Z0. That works great. Again, there was an iteration. My first one was way longer than it needed to be. I did a version, this was the first top where it sheared clean off, where I ran the machine into the end of something. I have this, so this is the piston that's inside here. This version has a threaded hole in the end because I thought I might want to create different profile probes, but it's just got like a little recess there, put a spring in, and then this block goes up and down into the optical sensor with a pin that runs through into that slot. I don't know how often I'll really use this, but at least in theory I'm happy that it is working. We'll see what the height mesh shows at the end. So this is what that height map data looks like, and boy, that surface that I think of as even is very off. That's cool. So that's pretty successful. A bunch of iteration on design, but all of which was really procrastinating before I got the water cooling hooked up again, spindle wired up again. I ran some tests, and the tests were pretty good, but I had a bunch of reliability issues with that. Let me try and hold that more steadily. because I had just tacked the wires in place, and there were a few places where those tacks were not as reliable as they should be, and as I moved the machine around I had a lot of erratic behavior and it was driving me crazy. So I decided it's time to do this properly. I've unwired everything, and now we're going to look at what the setup is going to be. So down here is where the VFD lives and the power supply, and this is where I want the Duet to live. And so I want to run all the cables down through one of these sections into here, so this can live in cover, and all of the wires will run up probably through a panel that I'll make here, and then run through all of the cable chains, which I have not configured and set up yet. And so what I'm going to do now is take these connectors which go onto the panel the Duet Wi-Fi, and wire them into the backs of these guys, which are little panel mount connectors, and then the motors I'll wire up to these so that they can just plug together in a nice reliable way. And yes, then I should have at least solid wiring for everything, and I won't keep running into that being weird. And then I just need to figure out what I want to do, the equivalent for all of these limit sensor wires, probe wires, etc. that also need to run through the gamut and connect to the Duet. I may just end up running essentially one limit per one of these. I need 3 wires in each, but I have 10 of these, so 4 motors plus 3 axis limit switches plus a probe. I think we should be good. Yeah. So next is a bunch of soldering and boring things. Also, whilst I've been at it, I've been fiddling around in the background with setting up to mount little potentiometers on the robot cameraman, at least on this axis, and eventually on the main crane body down here somewhere, because I have this desire to run an Arduino to have a feedback loop to be able to use the potentiometers to figure out what angle it's at, so that I can use that to do some kind of homing for the crane angles. For a long time I've wanted to do some kind of homing, but the crane angles are kind of a bit fiddly to do that with. But the potentiometers give me the potential to get feedback of exactly what the angle the robot is at the time, and maybe I can use that for other stuff as well in the future. So that's just a little bit of a side mission that's happening in the background. Of course, the other thing I do need to figure out is exactly what the main bed is going to look like. I have this old chunk of MDF here at the moment, which is not the right size. I guess I'll probably buy something special, but there's a lot going on. There's a lot of wiring to happen and blah, 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 blah. But there you go. Bit of an update. Lots of stuff is happening. Not all of it's terribly exciting to film, and I've had COVID, and so I've just been doing little dribs and drabs of stuff. But I thought I'd do a bit of an update. So hopefully that's interesting to somebody. Thanks for watching. See you next time.